80% of people 1 year into the business are out. They're doing something else. But this is part of the reason why, because they don't have an accurate assessment of reality. They're not clear on what this actually is, right? So number one is it's a sales business, right? Number two is that the money's not in the service, it's in the selling of the service.
So the question is this: how do most agents find the secrets to succeed in today's competitive real estate market, especially when the top agents are keeping those secrets to themselves? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. Hi, I'm Aaron Amuchastegui, and welcome to Real Estate Rockstars. Real Estate Rockstars, this is Aaron Amuchastegui with a quick commercial break with one of our newest sponsors. I'm super excited to be partnering with these guys. Does 15 to 20% ROI investing in turnkey rentals sound attractive? Did you know you can use the BRRRR strategy with new construction that has immediate equity already? You guys have heard me talk about stuff like this. Rent to Retirement offers fully turnkey properties that are newly built or renovated, leased and managed, allowing you to invest with confidence out of state. They have single family, multifamily, new build, and syndication opportunities across multiple markets that maximize cash flow, appreciation, and equity. Rent to Retirement assists investors in learning how to build a comprehensive business plan with the best investment and tax strategies to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. There's no excuse not to get started in real estate investing when you have the right team and systems in place. To learn more, visit renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com or call 1-800-311-6781. That's 800-311-6781 to learn about how you can get started investing in some of the best cash flow markets today. You know, and if you guys want to learn more about Zach, episode 1025, we dig in for a good 45-minute interview where he tells you the secrets to investing in real estate out of state. And him and I shared a lot of ideas about what works and what doesn't. You'll get to hear a lot about his company and his business. You know, if you're an agent from out of state and you've got referrals looking for stuff, they work with other agents on a referral basis. And we've talked so much since COVID hit that everybody needs to have a backup plan, right? Every one of you agents needs to have a backup plan. You should all be investing in real estate. And if you're having trouble finding the time and the team to do it, maybe something like Rent to Retirement is the solution for you. So thank you for listening. Go check them out. Now back to the rest of our podcast.
Hey, Real Estate Rockstars. This is Kelly Skevel, guest hosting for Aaron again. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Aaron Novello. Welcome, Aaron.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Kelly, and really excited to spend some time together and hopefully share some information that could be helpful and useful to all the listeners.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So you're out of Fort Lauderdale, right?
Yep. Yeah, Southeast Florida. I say Fort Lauderdale because it's a place that people can recognize mentally. Right. But yeah, in that geographic area.
Okay, awesome. And have you lived in that area your entire life? Are you a transplant? How'd you end up there?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I have, which is very rare in South Florida. Lived here for the majority of my life. Only spent a year outside of Florida. So it's we're born and bred here.
Oh, awesome. All right. So tell me how you got started in real estate. Like, what was your start? Kind of give us your background and history here.
Yeah. So, my family of origin, were very kind, nice people doing the best they can under the given set of circumstances that they had. They're very much so like financially illiterate, just hardworking and selling time for money, but didn't understand kind of the leverage of capital or the leverage of labor or things of that nature. And I had some experiences as a younger person where I got to a place internally where I was like, you know what, like, I don't know what the way is, but I'm going to either find the way or make the way, because I do not want this to be my experience or anybody that's in my close proximity for it to be their experience. So, I got myself into that kind of state. And then, I stumbled upon, in serendipity, was in a class at the University of Florida where there was a guest speaker. It was a business class, and it was a realtor who came in. And that realtor happened to be particularly attractive, so she caught my attention. And I started to just think about this idea of, like real estate could be a vehicle. And what had happened was as well is because I had this kind of really burning desire for financial freedom and independence and financial literacy, that really my family of origin couldn't give me. I started prior to kind of bumping into that individual who exposed me to real estate, reading obsessively books about wealth, and they all had a tendency to gravitate towards real estate. So I figured, well, what better way to learn about the investment vehicle of real estate than to help people buy and sell it? So that's how I kind of stumbled into, or perhaps was pushed by an invisible hand into the real estate game.
I love it. That resonates so deeply with me because I have a very similar story of that. So, if you're not born into an entrepreneurial type of family, it's really, it takes you stepping outside of the box. Like you said, reading a lot of books. I did the same thing and found that, everything about wealth building vehicles for people that weren't wealthy and didn't come from wealthy families, real estate was the vehicle to get you there. I think we both can agree.
So it certainly is like one of the main vehicles to help you get there. And what's interesting is the majority of the listeners, it's probably their experience because 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So if you put that into perspective, like if you're at Starbucks and there's 10 people in line, almost 7 of them, that's their experience. So what I'm aware of is that through kind of education, through proximity, to other individuals who can kind of help share their mental maps and the way that they think, then you can dramatically change your experience and therefore the experiences of others that are in your proximity.
Right. Yeah. And the total change of trajectory of you and your family, ancestors. I love it. So when you got started, did you start on a team? How long ago did you get started?
So I've been doing this since 2006. So 16 plus years. And to answer your question, initially, I did work on a team kind of as like a buyer's agent. And it was a very traditional type of company, operating in a very traditional manner in Gainesville, which, I mean, it's a great city, but it's a Sleepy Hollow kind of town. If the University of Florida wasn't there, it'd just be cows, right? Pastures and stuff. So, the mental maps go along with that, right? And there was one individual, he was one of like maybe 3 or 4 people in that market who did, meaningful amounts of business. So I got proximity to him, and very quickly in a short period of time, I was doing a number of transactions, had like 8 or 9 pending. And then it was like, all right, well, what's true for me is I think that, I can do this on my own. And I got some encouragement to do that, which I did. And I still didn't really understand what the game was though, because I do believe you need an accurate assessment of reality in order to produce a good outcome. So you have to see the way it actually is, right? Not the way you would like it to be or you think it is, but the way it actually is. And in order to get an accurate assessment, you have to get proximity to somebody who's producing outsized outcomes. Because if they are, that means that they're seeing something very clearly that you're not.
Right.
So it was right at that time frame when I decided like, hey, I can do this on my own. I got proximity to like a mentor or a teacher who gave me a very, very clear, realistic picture as to where I should be focusing my attention. So it's really interesting, Kelly. Like if I was to ask people like, hey, what's your most valuable resource? And people give me very interesting answers. They'll say things like time. Like, okay. They'll say all these different types of things. Money. Like, okay. Well, I would propose that it is time. It's just a little bit more nuanced than that. It's actually attention. So we live in a time frame where our attention is like exceptionally fragmented. You have all these people that are trying to pull at you for attention, all these different podcasts to listen to, all these different people that are telling you how to do it and how to, like that sort of thing. So what I'm aware of is our time frame on planet Earth is limited. We have 27,550 days. It's about average, about 75 years in the industrialized world. Women have a tendency a little bit more than men, but that's what's average. Now I'm 41, so that I've used like approximately half. So whatever's left, I'm going to sleep through a third of it, right? Because if you sleep 8 hours a day, it's a third of a 24-hour day. So that whole exercise is just to demonstrate that it's just not a lot. So you can have anything in life you want, but you can't have everything because you're limited by time. So you have to be very intentional about where you're spending your attention. And even in our culture, like we'll say things like, if my kids, if I really want them to listen to me, I'll say something like, hey, pay attention. So what's interesting is like, we understand unconsciously that there's something being exchanged, that it's a currency of sorts, right? So in the world that we're in, and whether it's real estate or anything else, it's like, I got to be very clear on what I'm choosing to spend attention on.
Okay.
So at that time, I was spending attention on buyers and spending attention on running people around. And I didn't understand like what I would call the four noble truths of real estate. So the first noble truth is that, that this is a sales business. It's no different than selling books door to door, knives door to door, subscriptions over the phone. Like, because of HGTV and these reality TV shows, it's romanticized what this is, but you're a salesperson. And what I'm aware of is like all these people come up with all these different names to try to push away the fact that they're in sales. They'll be like, I'm a realtor. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Right. I'm a real estate advisor. What does that mean? I'm a real estate consultant. What does that mean? All of that is an attempt to try to run away from the fact that you're a salesperson who happens to sell real estate.
Right.
So like, I didn't know that.
Okay.
But once I got that, it's like, oh, okay, well, all sales businesses have to follow a sales process. No matter what you're selling, you got to prospect every day. A day not spent prospecting is a day not spent in business. You have to know how to set appointments, because the last I checked, Kelly, people aren't running out of the woodwork saying, hey, you know what? That's a cool shirt you have on. You're awesome. Come over to my house and list my home for 6%. Yeah. Like, that doesn't happen, right? The third thing you got to do is you got to pre-qualify those appointments to make sure that they have the means and the motivation to actually do something when you see them. Right. The fourth thing you got to do is you got to know how to present, because everybody and their grandma has a real estate license. So you have to give them a compelling reason to choose you versus somebody else. The fifth thing you got to know how to do is handle objections, right? Because when you're sitting there, they're going to be like, I want to list it higher. Where's your office? I haven't heard from your company before. Your commission's too high. I got a friend in a business. Like, you have to know how to handle that. Right. And then you have to close. Right. Because closing is a skill. You have to ask for business. And then if it doesn't sell, you got to lower the price. Like, that fundamental reality, I didn't understand at first. Okay. And I think a lot of people don't. And I think part of the reason why there's such a super high attrition rate in our game, which is 80%, nobody likes to talk about it. Everything's yay. Okay. 80% of people 1 year into the business are out. They're doing something else. Yeah. But this is part of the reason why, because they don't have an accurate assessment of reality. They're not clear on what this actually is, right? So number one is it's a sales business, right? Number two is that the money's not in the service, it's in the selling of the service. So when I coach clients, you know what I mean? Like, I have the good fortune where we coach, people all across the country, some of the top producers, grossing over 7 figures. When I ask people that are at lower levels of production, I'm like, what's your competitive advantage? And they'll say things to me like, well, I'm honest. Okay.
I was just talking, who did I interview? It might've been Rudy. He was like, we're done saying we're honest. We're all honest. We know this. Like we've upped the game. We're all honest. We got it.
Yeah. Or they'll say things like, I put my clients first. I'm like, that's like immature. Like, that's kind of pathetic. Like, your clients expect you to know what you're doing.
Yes.
Right. It's kind of like if you go to the grocery store and they have groceries, do you freak out? Do you jump up and down? Oh my God, you have groceries today. Like, no, like that's the expectation that they're going to have the groceries when you show up. Exactly. Just like clients expect you to know what you're doing. They expect you to know how to negotiate. They expect you to know how to fill out contracts. Like, they expect that. Yeah. But the money's not there. The money's in the selling of the service.
Yeah. Okay.
So it doesn't mean we give people crappy service. The service is expected. What it means is if you want to, be able to increase revenue, you have to learn how to sell the service. So if that's what's true, what should you spend most of your time doing? Learning how to sell. Right. And I didn't get that at first. Okay. So once I got that, it was like, oh, now this is where I should be spending what? Attention. I need to learn how to prospect. I need to learn how to set appointments. I need to learn how to overcome objections. I need to learn how to price property and help people to self-discover that this is where they need to be price-wise, right? These are all skills that needed to be learned.
Yeah. And so once you came to this realization and you started really focusing on this stuff, tell me about what is your prospecting? Like, what does that look like? You're prospecting every day. What's that look like for you?
Yeah. So for the first, 5 years of my career, all the way up to 100 transactions, it was prospecting 6 days a week. for 3 hours a day, 2.5 to 3 hours a day, anywhere from 20 to 30 contacts per day, because contacts equals contracts.
Okay.
And I understood that, right? The other thing that's a key component, Kelly, that I don't want people to miss is it's kind of like, if we were going to chop down a tree and you just get to chopping right away and it takes you like 8 hours to chop it down. And what I do is I spend 3 hours sharpening my axe and then I go to chop it down and it only takes me like 30 minutes once I've sharpened the axe. Then I'm being more efficient with time. So at first, I wasn't good. Just like anything else you're going to do at first, you're not going to be great at. And what I realized is like, I got to role play and practice. So amateurs practice until they can get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. So if you want to get paid like a professional, you need to practice like one. Like you're literally going in people's houses asking for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 and you're showing up and winging it.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh my God, you have a dog. I have a dog. We should be besties. Like that is so
really
lame.
Good point. That's a really good point. When you put into context the amount of money you're asking for in commission, from these sellers or even buyers, with the sellers, you need to really show up and be professional.
100% and be prepared, right? It's kind of like, imagine going to the doctor and like, you like, God forbid you broke your arm or something and you go into the ER and you're like, look to the doctor and the doctor's like, oh my God, your cardigan? It's so cute. Like, where did you get it? Like you would look at them and be like, are you kidding me? Is that really what's happening now?
Right here. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I need you to fix this. Right. And then we can chat, what I'm saying? So, and I think people get that confused, right? So the point being is that I also role play twice a day, 6 days a week.
Okay. Still today, or you're saying in the beginning?
In the beginning, really for the first 5 years of my career.
So you were role playing. Okay. And this was
while prospecting simultaneously. Yeah.
Okay. So 3 hours in the business and you're prospecting, you were calling your sphere, you were cold calling. Who were you?
Yeah. So at that time, what I'm aware of is that the marketplace, so I started in 2006, everything's great, kind of like it is now. And people don't realize it's like the time of lack of skill because over the last 24 months, you haven't had to be particularly skilled at anything in order to make money. You don't have to be skilled in negotiating. You don't have to be skilled in pricing. You don't have to be skilled in virtually anything, right? You just have to show up, dress moderately okay, don't say anything stupid. If you list the property, it's going to get multiple offers and then you're going to take the credit for it, which is always interesting to me because you had nothing to do with it. Right. So what I'm aware of is that was the time frame I was in. And then 2007-8 happened. And when 2007-8 happened, the financial markets collapsed, the real estate market really took a dive. But what happened was expired listings exploded. Right. Because of a lack of skill on agents' part. They didn't know how to price property. They didn't know how to help people self-discover. They didn't know how to negotiate. They didn't know how to let people see what was happening because they didn't even know what was happening.
Yeah. There's a lot of adjusting on the fly, I would imagine. I was not an agent at that point, but I would imagine there was a lot of needing to adjust and pivot in the moment when everything's like falling down around you.
Yes. And here's what's interesting is for the listeners, if you're paying attention, when times get tough, only the skilled get paid. That is true. So I hear a lot of people now, I hop on Clubhouse calls, they DM me. They're like, what do you think's going to happen in the market with interest rates and la, la, la. What do you think is underneath that, Kelly? What's underneath that is fear. It's anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety.
Because they don't know what to do.
It's a constant topic of conversation. Is the market crash? When is it crashing? What do we do?
And what's interesting is that underneath it is fear and anxiety because knowledge equals confidence and ignorance equals fear. So if you don't know what to do, you're scared. And what's interesting for me is that I know experientially because I worked on those skills. I grew my business in that environment 25% year over year, went all the way up to 100 transactions while everything else was collapsing around me. So I'm actually pumped. I'm super excited that things are changing because I am equipped. I know exactly what to do. And this is an opportunity to grow market share.
Yeah. I think you make that's super valuable information. You've lived through it already. You learned how to pivot. You figured out how to grow your business. You knew you had to change. You understand that when things start to change, you have to pivot quickly. So you were really going after expireds at this point when you're focused, you have a clarity about what you do as an agent, what your goals are. And so now you're prospecting 3 hours a day and you're really hitting the expireds hard.
Yeah, that's what we was doing, and focused on listings, because the third noble truth is that all the leverage is on the listing side.
Yeah.
And the truth is you can't be world-class at both. A lot of people try to be world-class at both, but you can't. So what I'm aware of is whoever controls the inventory controls the market. Anybody who's worked with buyers over the last 24 months can appreciate what I'm sharing with you. And what I'm aware of is that that's always been the case, but this environment has just exacerbated that. So I just made it remember how I shared at the beginning of this, like where you spend attention matters?
Yeah.
So once I realized like, all the leverage is on the listing side, then I was like, okay, that's all I'm going to pay attention to.
Okay.
Right now, for some people, I know that they, build teams and they look at the buy side, and I get that. I'm aware that, particularly up to that 100 transaction level, I wasn't even thinking about buyers at all. Like I didn't have an e-key. Like I couldn't even show a property if you wanted me to. Like,
you were so hyper-focused on sellers.
100% dialed in on sellers. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And that I would, imagine now here we are, what, 12, 13 years later? How far? That now, because you've been working that you're a listing agent, that now, like you said, the listing agents hold the key. Now you're not out there fighting everybody for these like few listings that we have coming on, right? Because I don't know about your market, but up here, we just like, it is like across the US, it's just a crazy low inventory. So we actually are fighting for listings in my market. Like, we're being interviewed. There's 3 agents being interviewed by every prospective listing.
Yeah. And I want people to realize like that happens for me too. It's not like I'm just like, like the C parts when I show up and the people just drop to their knees and sign a listing agreement. Like that's not what's true. But what is true is I have been listing personally over 100 properties a year for the last 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
So because of that, what's happening, to your point, Kelly, is that you actually have to be like really skilled when you're in competitive situations. So when they say to you, well, you know what, we're going to interview other agents. What do? Do you just say, okie dokie, Smokey? Thanks. See you later. Have a nice day. Let me know. And then you walk away and send them a gift, and then they list with somebody else.
Yeah.
Versus having something to say like, hey, listen, I appreciate that. I know this is a big decision and you want to make sure you're making the best decision possible. I usually find that at this point in the presentation, and again, I mean this really humbly, like 90% of the people, they just hire me and put me to work. If for some reason there's a little bit of hesitation, there's usually a few reasons why. So what I'd like to do at this moment, Kelly, is I'd like to just go over with you the 3 decisions that a seller needs to make prior to putting their home on the market, in hopes that doing so can help you to make the decision that you feel is best. And whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. Fair enough? Yeah, that's fair. Okay, well, the first decision that needs to be made is if you're even going to sell it. I know sometimes when sellers see kind of what the marketplace is bearing at the moment based on what buyers and sellers have been agreeing to, it's not in alignment with their expectations, or it actually wouldn't produce an outcome in terms of net to them that would allow them to make the move happen. Just so I'm clear, I'm imagining based on our initial conversation and the reasons why you're moving, that's not a serious consideration or option for you. You've definitely decided you're selling. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, great. So let's check that off the list.
Hey, real estate rock stars. This is Aaron Buchestegi, and I'm interrupting myself to bring you this commercial break from one of our sponsors. And I know you guys would much rather listen to the content and not the ads and not the sponsors, but this is one that I'm actually super, super excited with. So many of the realtors that we interview on the show, they talk about how much systems are important and how much follow-up is important. And I'm really, really excited about our new sponsor. There's somebody I've been looking at for a long time. And when they reached out to me, I said, yes, we have to be able to do this deal. So that sponsor is Follow Up Boss. On an interview last week with agent Mark McGuire, I asked him what his favorite software and what his favorite system was. And he said it was Follow Up Boss. And then he went on for another 3 or 4 minutes to talk about why Follow Up Boss was the best CRM he uses. So there's a lot of superstars out there that use Follow Up Boss. Some of the stats they gave me: Robert Slack, 1.5 billion team in Florida, #1 in the US. He uses Follow Up Boss to get a 400% ROI on its massive paid lead spend. Deborah Beagle, co-owner of the Ashton Group in Nashville, uses Follow Up Boss to guarantee that agents who join her team get 2 homes under contract in the first 90 days. That's a big guarantee for new agents. Barry Jenkins of Your Friends in Real Estate uses Follow Up Boss to automate everything so his team can produce $200 million on 25-hour work weeks. All right, so here's an offer. You guys are going to get this special for being Real Estate Rockstars listeners. Now, I've used Follow Up Boss. We've actually used it in our non-real estate businesses as well because it's so good at being able to set timers, set automatic texting and emailing, and what do you know? Best name ever, Follow Up. So here's what we got. For Real Estate Rockstars listeners, you get a 30-day free trial. That's normally 14 days. So in order to get this, you go followupboss.com/rockstars. So again, followupboss.com, just like it sounds, /rockstars. Go there, get your 30-day free trial and check it out. Especially if you aren't using any systems or any CRMs yet, this will be a great one for you to start with. All right, everybody, thanks again. Now back to our show.
So the second decision that needs to be made is, the price that we ultimately decide to set on the property. Now, I'm imagining if you're like most homeowners, myself included, you'd like it to be more. And trust me, I'd love to be your superhero, put an S on my chest and cape on my back and, get you $100,000 more while we're at it. At the same time, having reviewed this information very closely together as a team, having seen what's on the market and not selling, your neighbor across the street, and they've been there for 58 days and haven't sold, then having seen what's sold and closed most recently, right in the community, just 2 streets over that sold for $550 a month ago. Are we in agreement that the marketplace is showing us somewhere around that $550 number seems to be reasonable?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we can check that off. So then the third decision that needs to be made is just who's going to help you. Now, you strike me to be super straightforward and to the point. I'm the exact same way, Kelly. Here's my question to you. It's based on our initial conversation in preparation for connecting, based on what we sent over to you, that you looked at and reviewed, based on, our conversation today and our time spent and, our reviews online and things of that nature. Do you feel comfortable and confident with me that I can help you sell this home and I'd look out for your best interest? Yeah, I do. Okay, great. Well, you know what the great news is? What's that? I know I can. Let's just go ahead and take care of the appropriate paperwork, get the process started. Fair enough? Like having the ability to be able to do that versus okie dokie, see you later and walk.
Not just the ability, but the confidence, right? Like there is a level of confidence that you have to have, I feel, to have that conversation head on when somebody says that. Now, for our listeners, when they say after the third question and they say, yeah, I agree, but I still would feel more comfortable interviewing more people. How do you address that?
Yeah. And listen, I'm appreciative of that. I really am. What I'm aware of is that if we're still at that place, it may be one other thing perhaps that you may be considering, and it could be like the professional fee, like the commission. So just so I know, is that, something that you want to think about or maybe talk to other people with, or, where are we at with things? And then hush, breathe, and listen. So if you notice what I'm doing is I'm fleshing it out.
Yeah.
What is it? It's either me, which sometimes I might not be the right compatibility, right? We might not vibe with each other.
Yes, what it is.
It's the price or it's the commission. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And it's having the intestinal fortitude to like open up the kimono and be like, hey, let's do this. Like, tell me what it is. I love yeses. I love nos. I hate maybes. So the intention is I'm going to give you all the information that you need. So that way you can make the decision that you feel is best. And we'll decide together as a team if we're going to do this or not. Fair enough? Okay. Now, to your point, if we circle back when you said the word confidence. So here's what's interesting, Kelly, is when I'm in a group, let's say I'm in a room, there's 1,000 people there and I'm giving a talk and I'm like, all right, what does confidence mean? What's the working definition of confidence? So if I was to ask you that, what's your working definition of confidence? And this isn't like a leading question. I'm genuinely interested in your answer.
Ooh, I don't know. I've never been asked that. What's my definition of confidence?
Yeah. Like in your mind, your working definition of confidence.
Yeah. Knowing, it's a good question. I don't know. Feel like knowing that I can answer the questions or knowing that I know my stuff, right? Like, okay,
cool. So having like knowledge of information.
Yeah, there we go. There you said it.
Well, and here's what's interesting, because like if you get into like derivatives of words, you'll get into like what their actually meanings are. So the Latin derivative of the word confidence is confianza. And what confianza, for anybody who speaks Spanish, what that word actually means is to trust. So here becomes the interesting question. Who are you trusting? myself. So I remember being in a room where I'm role playing like this, and there's couple hundred people in the room, and a woman in the back is like, man, you actually say that to people? Like, how can you be that confident? I said, well, what you're really asking me is how can I trust myself so much?
Yep. I like that.
Now, here's what's interesting. How do you develop trust in yourself? So I'm sure there's something in your life, Kelly, that you have like trust over. Like if I was like, hey, can you do this? You're like, yep, absolutely. Whether it's a hobby, whether it's a sport, whether it's like something, you're like, yep. But here's the question. How did you cultivate that trust? You did it repeatedly.
I was just going to say repetition. Yep.
Repetition is the mother of learning and the father of action, which makes it the architect of accomplishment. You did it by repetition. So what's interesting is when we circle back to role play, and when I tell you I role played twice a day, 6 days a week, I would stand in a room and chant and be like, hi, my name is Aaron. I'm calling about the homeless for sale up Banana Street. Is this the owner? Great. Just out loud as fast as I could, right? I would videotape myself. I would record myself. So when you put in all of those reps, then you cultivate a tremendous amount of trust.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm loving this. I'm loving this because I think that, even though we are salespeople, I don't think there's agents out there that will argue with that, right? Like that we're in sales. I would say most of us can agree on that. But even being in sales, I feel, and I've experienced this myself, like it's a little scary to cold call, to prospect cold and warm, even warm leads sometimes, and to build that confidence, you have to do that by repetition, right? And you just get more confident when you're speaking out loud. And you're saying you were practicing twice a day, every day, on top of your 3 hours of prospecting.
100%. So think about this. So according to, you said a few things that were interesting about like, perhaps if there's agents who they wouldn't agree that we're in sales, they're hallucinating. Right. Like it's not an accurate assessment of reality. That's like looking up and being like, the sky's not blue. It's like, well, yeah, it is. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we know that, right?
Yeah. But we like to push it away. I don't want to be like salesy. I'm like, that would be like the guy mowing your grass being like, nah, I don't really like I'm not a cutter grasser guy. He's like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Like, that's exactly what you are.
Yeah. You just gotta own it.
And then get over it. And then knowledge equals confidence and ignorance equals fear. So when you're saying to me it's a little intimidating to get on calls. Why? Because you're afraid. And if you're afraid of something, that means you don't know something.
Yeah.
So then it's about seeking out and getting proximity to somebody who can teach you, who can share the information and on like what to do and how to do it. And what it makes me think about is that there's different kind of modes of learning. There's a hierarchy of learning. At the bottom of the hierarchy of learning is reading and writing. Now that's interesting because that's the way we get formal education, right? But it's the lowest form of learning. As we get higher up the chain, the second highest form of learning is simulation. It's where you pretend to do the real thing. So doctors simulate on what? Cadavers. Yeah. Right? Like pilots actually go into a device called a simulator.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Like military. My brother-in-law is retired, military. What do they do all day long? Simulations. They practice doing the real thing, practice jumping out of planes, practice different kind of scenarios. Right. Yeah. So what would be simulation for us?
Role playing. Yeah. It shouldn't be any different, right? We should be practicing.
It shouldn't be any different, but we just need the mental map to think that way. Now, the highest form of learning is actually doing the real thing, right? It's picking up the phone, calling people.
Yep.
So what's interesting is that if you want to increase that learning curve, what I should be doing every day is reading and writing, simulating, doing the real thing. Read, write, simulate, do the real thing. Read, write, simulate, do the real thing. And if you do that over and over and over and over again, what'll happen is that you'll ramp up the learning curve and you'll become much more skilled. So according to NAR, if an agent goes on 100 listings, they will only take 20 of them. Oh. Now, the average commission, let's say it's like, I don't know, now at the marketplace, let's use round numbers, $10,000. So if they take 20 in a normal market, like 15 will sell. So they'll make 150 grand. Okay. Well, my closing ratio is 85%. Wow. So if I go on those 100 listings, I'll take 85 of them.
Yeah.
Now, if 75 of those sell, I make 750 grand. Yeah. Now, here's my question to you. What's the difference? Skill.
Yeah.
So remember how I shared with you that the money's not in the service. The money is where? It's in the selling of the service. Yeah. So I should learn how to sell the service.
Yeah. This makes a lot of sense. I love it. So let's back up a little bit. Tell me, so you sell over 100 houses a year, right? Am I right? What do you?
Yeah, we do like 150 to 160 transactions. I've done 200 2 years in a row.
Okay.
But then what I started to do, I knew what the next evolution was, and I really didn't want to do it, like to have a big team and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So then I started to monetize the skill by doing coaching and consulting.
Okay. But you do have a team. You have agents on your team.
Well, I have 2 agents that are on the team, like a listing agent and which I'm training. He's like 4 months in. He's taken 5 listings. So he's off to the races. And we have a buyer's agent, but the majority of my staff is administrative to process all the deals we're doing. So I have a listing coordinator, I have an ops manager, I have a transaction coordinator, I have a client care coordinator.
Okay.
So these are all people that allow us to deliver on the promises that we're making.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. Everybody has gone about that I chat with has gone about building their teams differently. That's super interesting. So you've got the infrastructure in place. You really built your infrastructure, your support team before you brought on a bunch of agents.
Yeah. And I did it in the right kind of order, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I say right because I don't know, it just makes sense to me because I think it's so fascinating to me when I speak to agents that are doing like 20 deals and I'm trying to build a team. I'm like, why? Yeah. You're not even that productive. Like, what are you doing? Like, you should even be thinking about that until you personally are listing 4, 5, 6 homes a month. Like, that doesn't make sense to me, right? There's this natural progression. Like, you should build a team because you're too busy.
Yeah.
Because there's so many leads, like there's so much stuff and it's overwhelming. It shouldn't be where I'm trying to build it, using it as a kind of like a growth engine, like thinking that I'm going to grow through that, because that's a whole thing. There's a whole cost of sale. And really with the people that I know that do teams and do it at a high level, their profit margins are 25%, 20 to 25%, maybe 30%. So that's a whole separate thing where you become a manager. You're not the one that's like responsible for the results. You're responsible for the people that are responsible for the results. And that's a different thing.
Yep.
Different job.
Yep. A manager, like you said. Yeah, it's different. It's different. Yeah. So, okay. So when did you start? So, you've built a little bit differently. When did you start bringing on admin and bringing on support?
Yeah. So I did it immediately, like right away. So I had the good fortune. My secret weapon is my wife. She is the equivalent of me in admin that I am in sales. So she's like the LeBron James of admin.
That's awesome.
So it was just me and her. She had a job at the Princeton Review making like a whopping $18,000 right out of college, even though she graduated like magna cum laude at the University of Florida, which is most people's experience, by the way.
Yeah.
And I said to her, like, hey, I'm doing these, like, you should come and we should do this together. And she did. So she was the listing coordinator, transaction coordinator. She would wearing heels, putting lock boxes on, pictures with little cameras back in the day when we would do that.
Yeah.
And it was me and her all the way up to 100 deals.
Okay.
Just me and her.
So you get 100 deals.
5 years in. It took me 5 years to get to 100.
5 years in. Okay.
And then, so what I'm aware of is right out of the gate, I was already delegating. So I think what I see very frequently with the people that I coach and train is that right at that like 20-ish, 30-ish deals, they, because remember how we circle back and 65% of people live paycheck to paycheck. So because of that, they have this mental barrier with hiring people.
Yeah.
And if you've grown up in that environment, you heard things like money doesn't grow on
trees. Yep.
And eat all the food on your
plate. Yep.
Yeah. So what happens is you end up with the scarcity thinking.
Yeah.
So it creates this friction where you're like, I could just do it myself and save money. Yeah. But what I'm aware of is because I didn't have to pay Carla, right? She was like, I had this secret weapon of admin, listing coordination, transaction coordination that supercharged my growth. So I went from 17 deals to 50. And then from 50 to 79, 79 to 80, like 3, and then 83 to 100. So it's like, I was able to do that because I wasn't getting bogged down in the admin.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Having that clarity from the get-go. I don't think maybe it's just the people that I was surrounding myself with, but I feel like it wasn't, when I first got started, that was not talked about enough. It's not talked about enough that like to have the vision for down the road, to build your infrastructure early, but we're not talking bring on other agents. We're talking build your infrastructure, your support team.
Yep. Early. So if we're going to build like growth, if we're going to build something, if we don't want to be the one who's doing so, what agents do is they spend 80 to 90% of their time in income servicing activities and only 10 to 20% of their time in income producing activities. Income producing activities are prospect, lead follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate. PLAN. Are you following your plan?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I know invariably if I'm giving a talk to a whole group of people and I'm like, all right, well, what's your level of production? They're like, I'm doing 15 deals. I'm like, great. Well, you spend 15% of your time on income producing and the rest of your time, 85% of your time on income servicing. Yeah. I'm like, you're taking all the pic. You're like being present with the photographer for some reason. I don't know why. You're not a professional photographer. Like you're meeting appraisers out there. You're putting lock boxes out. You're putting signs out. Your numbers in a multiple listing service. So everybody's blowing you up. Like you're doing everything yourself, correct? Yeah. And you're also mothering your deals, like hovering over them. Like, oh my God, I'm the only one who can do any of this. And they're always like, do you have cameras? Like, are you watching me? Like, how do you know this? Because it's very predictable and duplicatable. Yeah. Whereas as you get to higher levels of production, I spend 90% of my time on income. Now I only do PLAN. I coach people and that's it. I don't do anything else.
Nice.
And having that foundation, like if I'm going to build, I need listing coordination and transaction coordination. And with that foundation, you can go up to 200 deals or more.
Yep. And this is how you differentiate yourself, right? So when you're in there selling your service, you're showing how you differentiate that you're not the marketing coordinator. You're not the transaction coordinator. You're not the person that does everything for the entire transaction. You have professionals that do their side of it.
Yeah. And I think it creates a value proposition if you do decide to have people on your team. So like the listing agent that I brought on, my brother-in-law, like he right out of the gate, he's role playing because I have a role play group that has people all across the country that are in it. It guarantees a role play partner 5 days a week. All you have to do is show up. We handle the scheduling, right? We role play partners change, weekly because people would say to me like, well, I can't find good role play partners. They're all flaky. I'm like, fine, I'll do it for you. So he's in that right out of the gate. He's in a group call with me once a week, right out of the gate. He's personally role playing with me 3 days a week. And we have a CRM for him where all he has to do is call these leads. He goes on the appointment, gets a contract signed, he hands it back to us and he doesn't do anything else.
Yes.
So like right out of the gate, think about that. Like all of those bad habits that could be created, all of that other stuff. He's like, nope. So he has somebody in his life being like, listen, that other stuff is not your job.
Yeah.
That's it. That's administrative. That's $10, $15 an hour, maybe $20 an hour work. This work we're doing here is $500 to $1,000 an hour work.
Yeah.
So if I was to approach you and say, hey, like, here's this like stock that you can buy. It's normally $500 an hour, but you could, or $500 a share, but you could buy it at $20 a share. Would you do that? Yeah. If it's a good company, right? But that's the same thing that's happening with our time. So I know what my time is worth, whether it's coaching or training or consulting or in real estate. So if anything is less than that, if I can buy my time for less than that, I do immediately. I don't even think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that a lot too. Yeah. There's a certain number. This is what I'm worth an hourly rate. If it's less than that, then I've hired it out.
Yeah. I was on a call with an agent, a coaching call, and she showed up and she's on Zoom and she's in the car for our call, which I think is interesting because I'm way busier than her, but I'm like at my house and she's like in her car. So I said, okay, I'm curious, where are you going? And it was like meet a photographer or some shit. I'm like, okay. And I'm curious, what are you worth per hour? You know what she said to me? I don't know. I said, because you don't know, you're willing to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, oh.
Yeah, that is powerful, right?
Yeah.
Tell me, so you did 141 transactions last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Most of them how many were listings?
Like 85% of that.
Okay. Awesome. And what was that in volume?
Yeah, it was like, I think 850,000 in GCI.
Okay. That's awesome.
And it was like 28 million, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's just you and 1.5 other agents on your team.
Yeah. And also coaching all these people, but I don't know who's counting.
We have the systems set up. You've got the systems in place. You've got the support. You've got the structure. This is.
Yeah. And the thing is that like, I think everybody has a superpower, Kelly. And like, I think the people who produce the outcomes that are the most outsized or favorable to them, like whatever it is that they want, I find that they're the most self-aware. What I mean by that is like, they don't think that they're great at everything. Like I know I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm very clear on what my particular gift is and what I'm very good at. And what I do intentionally and purposefully is surround myself with people who keep me in my gift. They keep me doing the thing that I'm really good at.
Yeah.
So like right now you're seeing me and you're like, wow, man, like, okay. But in other areas, like if you were to follow me around the house, if you needed something fixed, like I can't help you. Like, you know what I mean? Like be like, man, like you're really incompetent in that area. Well, okay. Well, I just know what I'm really good at. I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, I have a particular set of skills.
That's great though. Like you said, you know it, you're aware of it. And you know not to do. I mean, like, why would you be a photographer? Take all the pictures if you're not like. I'm the same way.
Yeah, and I'm aware. Like, so we have a client care coordinator on our team who's like an absolute rock star, and she's the one. So if it's like attract, convert, deliver, there's an attraction mechanism for attracting clients. There's a conversion mechanism, which has to do with skills and what you're saying and how you're saying it, and what's being sent out before you see them, and that sort of thing. But then there's delivery, which is like where you deliver. I used to imagine immaturely, like delivery was just like, okay, well, I step in, I give you great service, I sell it right away and like tap you on the head on the way out. Like, thanks, Kelly, have a nice day.
Yeah.
But what I'm aware of is now, particularly as people have more and more options at their disposal, that like love is like a business strategy that's almost impossible to beat. So like where you start to love on them. So now we use Follow Up Boss and we have an integration with AM cards. So like now we're sending clients when it's listed, they get a card with a little, thing from us, like a little gift card to get the relationship started off right. Once it gets out of attorney review or you get out of loan commitment, they get something. Nice. And then we're learning about clients. So we had a client recently, we found out he's really into hot sauces, like loves hot sauce.
Yeah.
So at the culmination, when it was, time to do so, we sent him a personalized note with like 50 hot sauces. Right. That's directly. So I'm curating experiences for people. We're delivering at a really, really high level because the internet is getting in the way of us and our clients, that relationship piece and that being able to deliver at high levels is becoming increasingly more important. I feel like in the past, you'd be able to get away with not doing it. I don't think you're going to be able to get away with that anymore.
You have a client care coordinator who this is her purpose. She loves on your clients. She gets to know them. She sends them. She knows when, that we're at this point in the transaction, send a card, send this, find out what they like, get them.
Talks to them for 30 or 40 minutes because like what's true for me is like, I don't know, like, is that my thing? Like I have the patience to do that, but like, I don't know. I'm not really that interested. Like, I don't know, like whatever, So, but she loves it. So the way I knew that we made a fantastic hire is that she came to me like at the beginning when we started this and she's like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm like, why? She's like, today this file's closing. I'm like, so why are you excited about that? She's like, I get to send them something. And that my brain would never think that way. It's just like, okay, like I wouldn't even process that. Right. So
I love this idea. I'm also like, I want to take care of my clients, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get them their closing gift. Like,
you're too busy, man. You got all these other things happening. So like, I'm aware that like now, and here's how I know it's really working well, because we have the good fortune of having like a bunch of reviews online, over 500 from people that we've helped over time.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is in the reviews, certain things show up. So they would say, Aaron's really professional. He knows the marketplace really well. He helped us sell us quickly. Like those were common. You know what's starting to show up now? They have great customer service. And I'm like, that would have never shown up before because like, I'm just not.
It's because of her. Yeah.
It's because of her, like 1,000,000%. So if you want to do something that's like big, you need 3 rock stars. One is you need a rock star in acquisition. Mm-hmm. The acquisition of clients, right? The attraction of clients. 2 is you need a rock star in operations. Yeah. Like the running of the business, they make sure everything's going cool and, pay your taxes, keep you out of trouble, like all that. The 3rd is you need a rock star in delivery.
Yeah.
Should deliver on a promise. So it's like what we've set up is I'm the rock star in acquisition. Carla, my wife, is the rock star in operations and Gabriella is the rock star in delivery.
I love it. I think that's super valuable. Yeah, that's awesome. This has been great. Lots of valuable stuff, lots of nuggets. Probably my favorite thing so far is this client care coordinator. What is it? Care coordinator? Is that what you call it?
Client care coordinator. I mean, it's a made up name, but it describes exactly what they're doing.
I love it. Yeah. Who cares? I love it. I think that's awesome. So we're getting towards the end of our time together.
Yeah.
I think we hit on a lot of good stuff. You said that you do coaching. You want to take a couple minutes to talk about that real quick?
Yeah. So that really happened like organically. It wasn't something that was intentional on my part. So somebody recorded me role playing. It didn't tell me about it. And then it like got disseminated amongst a whole bunch of people. And I would have people come up to me at like learning events and be like, "Hey man, I listened to you in the car." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then I realized like, oh, this is what happened. And at first I was a little like, well, that's not cool. You didn't like tell me. But then I was like, oh, this is really cool because now people know who I am. Yeah. So, and then people just started to organically reach out to me, right? Okay. At first for like mindset stuff. And then it morphed into like, can you help me in my real estate business? Okay. So yeah, we do that. And the thing that I do work with people individually. We have a group call, we have a role play group. The thing that I'd really like to talk about today is just the role play group, because what I'm aware of is that has been for me, one of the, if not the most important decision that I made in my career, that the money's not in the service, it's in the selling of the service. Yeah. And I got super serious about skills. Like I went deep down that rabbit hole, so much so that now people reach out to me to help them with that. Right. So that's the thing that I'd like to focus on. The website is findaroleplaypartner.com, findaroleplaypartner.com. And we have role play groups on the East Coast and the West Coast. It's 7:30 a.m. Eastern on the dot. So people reach out to me like, well, can we make it 8:30 for me? Can you make it 8? Like, no, it's 7:30 on the dot. Right. Okay. And you get a role play partner 5 days a week. We handle all the scheduling. All you have to do is show up. Okay. Now, it's not for the kind of folks that aren't consistent. If you're not consistent for 2 times, maybe 3 tops, we ask you to leave the group because the strength of the group is the consistency and people showing up. Okay. And then we also have a role play group just for the listing presentation. Because again, to your point, as you were saying, it's like, dude, these conversations are like $10, $15, $20, $30,000. Like, how are you not preparing for that? Right. So at 11:30 on the East Coast and the West Coast, we have people that are role playing just the listing presentation. Okay. That's all they're doing to really hone that in and dial that in. So yeah, findaroleplaypartner.com is the place to find that. And if I can help you or be of assistance or serve you in any way, you could check me out on Instagram at Aaron Novello. And I always answer to the DMs. It's not a bot, it's me. And I look forward to the opportunity to be of assistance.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, thanks for coming on today, sharing all your knowledge with us. And you just told everybody how they can get in touch with you. So that's awesome.
My pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to connecting soon.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, Real Estate Rockstars. This is Aaron Muchastegui jumping in again to thank you for listening to the show. Hopefully you guys loved listening to that one. And I want to make sure that you know about all of the extra resources that we have. And also, we need your help. They say podcasts are free. You get to listen to podcasts for free. But what is the cost of that podcast? I would say if I could beg you to pay anything for that podcast, I would say the cost of the podcast is going and giving a review. So whether you download it on Google or Apple or YouTube or anywhere else, please go give us a review. Say what you liked, what you didn't like. It helps us get better guests. The more reviews, the higher we get in the rankings. Right now, we are the biggest podcast out there for real estate agents, and we want to keep that spot because we know there's lots of podcasts out there. So go give us a review. Also, be sure to go to hibandigital.com. If you liked any of the resources that those real estate agents talked about, we've got a huge video vault of those resources for free. Every penny that comes on the podcast that we interview, they give us something that helps them get their deals or helps them work with their clients. And we put that in the toolbox in our vault for you. So go to hibandigital.com and you can get it. If you're looking for real estate education, go to rebusuniversity.com. We have all sorts of courses in there to help agents succeed in real estate, how to get the listing, how to negotiate deals, how to become an investor, all sorts of different stuff, rebusuniversity.com. And if you want to chat with me, go find me on Instagram. And if you come find me on Instagram, you can send me messages. Tell me what you want to hear. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. We try to put a bunch of content out there too. You can find me in 2 different places. It's at rerockstars.com for our Real Estate Rockstars page, or at aaronmuchastegui.com for my personal Instagram page, where I can chat with you about all sorts of different things. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.